Welcome to my Summerween Reads video. I have been seeing so much Summerween content on my TikTok and just basically all over the internet. Last year, I feel like I was seeing some, but this year in 2025, I feel like it's just become a real thing. We even have, brands and stores jumping on board. I had a small Summerween party this year. It was just a few people, but we had so much fun. That's all of the footage that you're seeing in this video. So I'm really excited to share some of my summer horror favorites. I think summer really lends itself to horror. I think the heat, the oppressiveness, the environment. I love especially when horror is set like in the South. And so I think that like humidity, man, I just love it. And obviously that is a big thing for the genre. We have a lot of horror movies and those kind of things set in the summer. So I'm excited to share some of my favorite summer horror books. So let's get right into it. I am putting this first because this is one of my most recommended books. If you read nothing else from this recommendation video, I hope that you read this. This is The Twisted Ones by T. Kingfisher. I picked it up on a whim. Barnes & Noble employee actually recommended it to me, and Barnes & Noble employees, God's gift for creation, they can do no wrong. So I actually bought it that day, and I'm so glad that I did. I have read it twice now. I read this physical copy, and then I listened to the audiobook with my husband, which was super fun. Highly recommend if you are an audiobook listener. This is about a woman who is returning to her grandparents' home to sort out in preparation to sell the house. And her grandmother was a bit of a hoarder. So she has a big job ahead of her. It's set in the summer. It's in the South. It is 100% folk horror. And it gets really crazy and really weird. I absolutely love this book. One of my all-time favorite books. T. Kingfisher is one of my favorite authors. I could go on and on about this, but I just really, really highly recommend it. If you like folk horror especially, this is a good one for you. The next one is a book that is rarely ever recommended, and that is Jurassic Park by Michael Crichton. This is a Barnes & Noble Classics, or Barnes & Noble Special Edition, whatever they call them. This also has The Lost World. If you have only ever seen the movie, I highly recommend the books. Jurassic Park and The Lost World, but even if you just read the first one, Michael Crichton's actually a fantastic author, and I recommend quite a few of his books, but Jurassic Park is my favorite. Jurassic Park is my favorite movie of all time. I have seen it so many times, but this book is genuinely scary. You don't really expect it going in, and maybe, if you were a child in the 90s when Jurassic Park came out, of course it felt scarier then than it does now, even though it does, I think it holds up pretty well. But both of these books have some really tense moments that just have you on the edge of your seat. You're like, what is going to happen? Are the dinosaurs going to get them? Maybe. But obviously it's set in a tropical location, so it's very hot, humid, and I think this is perfect for summer scary reads. I just honestly, other than The Twisted Ones, this would be my, my number one and number two picks. The next book is kind of controversial. I don't even know if I fully think of it as a summer book, but this is The Haunting of Hill House. I am completely obsessed with my copy. I just think it's so pretty. So just let's take a moment for that. It's this really old copy. But anyway, this is Shirley Jackson's The Haunting of Hill House. If you have seen the show, the series on Netflix, it is not the same. It has similar vibes, maybe a very similar premise, but the story itself is very different. I do think of this as more of a fall and horror, mystery. No, it's not a mystery. It's horror. But apparently it is, some people consider it summer, and that's because it's set in the summer. I still really think of this as fall, but I am including it in here for a couple reasons. One, to me, it is the perfect, slow burn gothic horror. I'm a huge fan of gothic horror. I love when horror is crazy out of the gate. I love when awful, horrible, crazy things are happening, on page 2. But I also love when something is just kind of creeping up and you have that uneasiness. And I think that to me is summer horror, because you have that buildup of heat and tension, and all of a sudden then something breaks loose. I kind of think of it as a thunderstorm, at the end of a really hot day. And no one does that like Shirley Jackson. And I am absolutely obsessed with this book. It is slower. Don't go into it expecting jumps and thrills. I mean, if we're comparing, these two books, very different books. This is a gothic horror, but I absolutely love it, and I really highly recommend it. Okay, my next recommendation I haven't actually read. so I guess I can't fully recommend it. This is Jackal by Erin Adams. I have heard that this is fantastic. And it is set in the summer. So I recently just bought this and I decided to include it in this video because I have heard good things about it. It's been on my TBR forever and I am going to read it this summer, probably very soon actually. So for that reason, I'm putting it on my Summerween reads. But it is I'll maybe follow up. If it's terrible and I hated it, I will let you know, but I don't think it's terrible. I've heard a lot of really good things about this. My next recommendation is Something in the Walls. So I listened to this on audiobook, so I don't have the physical copy. I wasn't a 5-star read for me, I will be honest with that, but I did enjoy it, and it is perfect for summer. It's set in a heat wave, and it gets more and more oppressively hot every day, and that really lends to the plot building and the tension building. It's definitely more of a thriller than a horror, however, there are horror elements. It is about a young teenager who is being haunted or possessed, I guess, by a witch, or at least that's what she says, and that's what the town thinks. And it's this kind of small town, and they have some very weird thoughts and feelings and practices, kind of very old school about, you know, they all still kind of have these superstitions. And so when this starts happening, they take it pretty seriously. But then a lot of stuff happens and goes crazy, and there's some really interesting discussion in the book. I don't want to say too much because if I say anything about what I want to say, it's going to give the whole plot away. So I do recommend it for summer, even though it wasn't like an outstanding 5-star read for me. I think, you know, not every book can be 5 stars, first of all, and sometimes it's just good to like have a fun book on your TBR to just put on an audiobook or pick up when you just need something a little bit easier to get through. And then finally, my last recommendation for Summerween is The God of the Woods. This was a massively huge book last year, so many people have probably already read it, but I would be remiss not to include it on this list because it is really classic summer. It's not horror, and it's not even really like, it's kind of mystery thriller, but it's very character driven. Warning, if you struggle with or you don't like when there are a ton of characters that switch POV and a ton of timeline jumps, this book does that. We're not only jumping multiple timelines, we're jumping a bunch of characters within those timelines. But and it's actually a pretty decently big book. I want to say, I don't own this one. I want to say it's around like 400 or so pages, which for a thriller is kind of surprising, or at least it was to me when I first picked it up. But I think that's because it's so character driven. It's really about the people in the story rather than necessarily the scariness, or, you know, the figuring out the mystery, although that is certainly part of it, and it is something that plays a pretty big role in the plot. It is set at a summer camp. Did I already say that? And so that makes it really, really summery. And again, it goes back in time, so we have time periods set like in the 70s, and so you get that really classic summer camp feel. I think of like, you know, the Parent Trap, the original Parent Trap, that feel of like summer camp. So I definitely got that from that, but again, warning if you're not into super heavy character-driven plots. I do know that there are some people who have read that book, and it was not for them because of that, or, you know, maybe another reason. But it is great for a summer horror. Really good one to sink your teeth into. Those are my recommendations for today. I could talk about summer horror for a long time, but I didn't want to force any books into this like kind of silly made up genre. And these are the ones that felt the most accurate to me. Again, if you're not going to read anything that I say today except 1 or 2 books, make it these 2. These are my top 2 recommendations. And honestly, let me take a moment to just plug T. Kingfisher. If you are a fan of fantasy and horror, she's your girl. Everything she writes, I think, is perfect. But also, big fan. I should say, with Michael Crichton's books, they are a little bit more, I don't want to say sci-fi, because that's not, well, it's kind of science fiction. It's kind of science fiction-y. So, you know, just keep that in mind. But definitely a lot of horror and thrilling elements. So anyway, thanks so much for joining. I Would love to hear some of your recommendations for summer horror in the comments. I am always looking for more summer horror. I feel like I just can never get enough of it, and I will save books that I know are summer horror for the summer. So feel free to please let me know what your favorite Summerween books are, just summer horror. And if you celebrated Summerween this year, I would love to see some pictures or inspiration. I had a lot of fun with it. We just had a good time. And yeah, if you want to know anything more about our party as well, I'd be happy to share that. So thank you again. Happy reading. Stay spooky, and we will see you next time.